GVOT News. I'm your host, Mary Riley, and here with us today we have GVSU's own Roy H. Olson Jr., the Dean of the College of Health Professions. Dr. Olson is going to talk with us today about the Ohio Functional Assessment Battery. I know you all must be excited. Thanks for being here today, Roy. I realize you must have taken some time off from your everyday occupations that provide meaning in your life.
Oh, no problem, Mary. I'm happy to have the opportunity to get everyone to talk about the assessment I created back in 1994.
Moving on. Roy, can you provide us with some basic information regarding the assessment?
Sure thing. I developed the assessment to be used as a tool with individuals with cognitive impairments. The purpose of the Ohio Functional Battery Assessment as a whole is to determine the functional level of a client's abilities with the goal of creating appropriate and measurable client objectives. My ingenious assessment provides the therapist with an understanding of the client's interests, resources, participation, motivation, as well as the barriers to therapy.
That sure does sound ingenious. So I hear there are 3 options to the test. A seasoned therapist like myself obviously knows which to use, but could you explain to the novice GVSU students how to select an assessment option?
Well, the 3 test options for the assessment include the Functional Living Skills Assessment, the Quick Functional Screening Test, and the Recreation and Leisure Profile, but I never actually reported the target audience for each test. Think of it as a creative discretion. Some therapists have said that the Functional Living Skills Assessment is most helpful for individuals with severe impairments, while individuals with low or moderate impairments are given the Recreation and Leisure Profile. It's so easy, even a physical therapist can figure it out.
Let's talk specifically about the Functional Living Skills Assessment. You've said before that it measures 19 parameters?
That would be correct. Would you like me to list them all?
We don't have all day, Roy, but sure.
New learning, ability to follow directions, decision making. Hey, does that blinking light mean that we're going to go on commercial?
We'll be right back after this short break.
Are you falling asleep with your conditions textbook? PBL's getting you down? Is Scott furrowing his eyebrow at you? Are you struggling to come up with those fresh new treatment ideas to impress Scott and Susan? Look no further, folks. PBL Hut is here to help you. Just call 616-123-4567 and you will have a 10-worthy PBL at your door in 30 minutes or less for the low price of $29.99. Call now, folks. This offer is only available until the GVSU faculty finds out.
And we're back with Roy Olson, who is just about to stop wasting my time listing the 19 functional parameters measured by the Functional Living Skills Assessment. Those functional parameters will be listed at the end of our segment for your reference. Roy, can you explain the setup and process of the Functional Living Skills Assessment?
Well, Mary, the instructions of the test are very specific, so the administrator should familiarize him or herself with it before using it with a client. The test is often conducted in hospitals and community facilities. However, private hospital rooms or activity rooms are the best choice within these types of buildings. Minimal distractions will ensure optimum results. It's also helpful to have a mentor present to give feedback the first few times a rookie therapist gives the assessment.
Great! So let's see one of the 6 activities of the Functional Living Assessment in action now. What is your name?
Robert.
Where are you living, Robert?
My mom's house.
What time of day is it?
Well, our appointment began at 2, so it's about 2:15.
That's right. So can you tell me why you're in this facility, Robert?
Because I have generalized anxiety disorder.
Okay. Can you please state 3 positive things about yourself?
Well, I have a wonderful family. I'm pretty healthy, and I guess I live in a nice house.
Those are great things to have, Robert. Do people generally like you?
I hope so.
I'm sure they do. Okay, Robert, it's time to complete the first activity. It's a domino pattern activity.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Please listen closely to the instructions I'm about to give you. I will ask you to repeat them when I'm finished. For this task, I'm going to show you some domino patterns. I'll show you each picture for 10 seconds, and then I'm going to mix up the dominoes. I'd like you to put the dominoes in the same pattern that I showed you. Please repeat the instructions and include all the details you remember.
You're going to show me the domino patterns for 10 seconds and then mix them up, and then you want me to put them in the same pattern that you showed me?
That's correct. Let's get started. Okay, Robert, put the dominoes in the same pattern that I just showed you. Fantastic job, Robert. Now we can move on to the next activity.
Okay.
So it seems as though it's very important the instructions be followed on both the administrator and the patient ends.
Yes, Mary, that is correct. What the video does not show is that the therapist also notes behavioral observations and clinical impressions throughout the duration of the assessment. Furthermore, the recreation and leisure profile can be used in conjunction with the functional living skills assessment to add to the body of information gained by the therapist.
Thanks, Roy. Can you now tell me about the strengths and weaknesses of the assessment?
Sure, Mary. As far as the strengths goes, the assessment contains 3 possible options but allows for therapist discretion of which to use, and ratings of emotional and behavioral variables allow for a more in-depth understanding of client performance. The assessment is also very useful in the OT process because it provides the therapist with information needed to develop an adequate treatment plan, including proper goals and specific objectives. And not to toot my own horn or anything, but the reliability and validity of the functional living skills assessment are pretty darn good. The reliability coefficient for all 19 parameters was reported to be between 0.89 and 1.0 in 3 separate studies. To measure validity, the 19 parameters of the functional living assessment were tested against the comprehensive occupational therapy evaluation scales. The validity coefficients were reported between 0.87 and 0.98, indicating that the functional living skills assessment strongly predicts performance on the comprehensive occupational therapy evaluation scales.
I must admit, Roy, those are some pretty impressive strengths. However, I did ask you if there are any weaknesses to the assessment as well.
Well, I think my assessment is pretty darn great, but I suppose there could be a few downfalls to it.
Well, according to one critique, there are quite a few downfalls. Like you mentioned earlier, you never explicitly described the populations you intended to be used for with the test in terms of age, developmental disability, or other implications. This has forced therapists to play a guessing game with regards to your assessment. They've also reported distaste for the lack of theoretical basis regarding the test's development. Scoring can also be quite confusing. The client is given a numerical score based on his or her performance in each activity. However, there's no real explanation of which numbers are considered high or low.
Well, thanks for being so honest. I'll keep those things in mind.
Anytime, Roy. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time for today. Stay tuned for next week's segment where we dive into the POWA model. Thanks again for being with us today, Roy.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Elizabeth, I'm happy to have the opportunity to get everyone.
Elizabeth.
How?
Just stop it. See the corner?
Stop.
Yeah. Well, there was 42 seconds of you.
Understanding of the client's performance. We gotta restart that.
Hey.
Thanks, Roy.
And I got makeup all over my book.